please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is the Saline City Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, August 14th, 2024. Will the recording secretary please call the roll?
Young.
Here.
Carroll.
He's walking in right now.
Fosdick.
Here.
Marl.
Here.
Gearbaugh.
Here.
Cole is absent. Heft.
Here.
Lafort.
Here.
Troika.
Here.
Staff present tonight are City Planner Ben Carlisle, the City Manager Colleen O'Toole, and Recording Secretary Katnick, as well as MC Moritz from OHM Advisors. Is there a motion on the table to approve the agenda as distributed?
Move to approve as distributed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion on the table to approve the meeting minutes of July 24th as amended or submitted?
So moved.
Approve as submitted.
Yes. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Public comment. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comments. The person is requested but not required to state their name and address for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. In all of my years of Planning Commission, I've never seen this many people in the audience, and I just want to remind you that it's not a back and forth. It's 3 minutes for you to say your piece. If there's something we can answer quick, there might be a chance it comes from me, but other than that, you talk and we record comments on it. So just wanted to remind you. So public comment?
I guess I'll come on.
Hello, you want to introduce yourself? Hi, we're the Schneiders. I'm Matthew Schneider,
I'm Rebecca Schneider.
and we live at 107 West Henry Street. So I've been in front of the city before. We live in a historic home, and we currently have an outbuilding that is not a historic property. We would like to demolish that and create an outbuilding that is more like a carriage house that fits the nature of our property. So we had it approved by the Historic District Commission. We sought a variance. The variance was not approved, but the Zoning Board of Appeals unanimously recommended to this body to look at this issue again, because we're limited at the square footage of 840 square feet. We have a larger lot size. So there's a case to be made for a slightly larger outbuilding. So we decided to come here and talk with you. Since Mr. Harrington is leaving, this was an issue we were talking about with him, and we just hope that you don't let this drop. We hope that you'll consider it at some point in the future, and if there's anything we can do to answer any questions, we would be more than happy to do so at a later date.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Everybody cheer.
Cheer.
I'm Wayne Yankee. I live at Brecken Village. I'm one of the closest ones to the new investment of all more townhouses to the north of us. And it's a shame, that the only thing I want to say about it is it's a shame that we're taking a wildlife refuge for both deer and birds and every other critter away by taking all the trees down and building buildings there. I know Saline needs more tax money, but I guess that's one way of doing it. But it's going to, some of us, and a lot of us here are from Brecken Village, and I know I can only speak for myself. When I moved here 3 years ago, I thought my wife and I looked at it and enjoyed seeing the woods. But that isn't going to happen anymore if this place is built. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
My name is Darlene Smith. I live at 560 Lancaster Court. For the last 8 years, I have enjoyed living at Brecken Village. My condo is the unit in the northeast corner of Brecken Village, and I think it's the closest one to the proposed development. Of course, I will be sad to lose the quiet, tree-filled lot that I enjoy now, but I know how important it is to have continued development in Saline. Our city has so many good things to share. I have two concerns about this proposal. My first concern is what is currently a dirt path on the south side of the development in this proposal. This will become a paved road and will be one of two access points to the community. The dirt path is approximately 36 feet from the edge of my condo, including the patio by my walkout basement. This will bring a lot of traffic and noise very close to the condominiums along that path. On the north side of the development, there is an existing road. I looked at the distance between that existing road and the Cascade Point townhouses that are on the north side of Saline Waterworks Road. Cascade Point will be the north neighbors to this development, just as we are the south neighbors. There is considerably more space between Waterworks Road and the Cascade Point homes, so increased traffic will be less of an issue there. I would like to see this road be the sole entrance and exit to the proposed development. And while it seems like that new development could manage with only one entrance as well, my other concern is that I understand that this is to be affordable housing. I understand the importance of affordable housing. I had a disabled son who lived in subsidized housing, and the home where I raised my children was about a half a mile from an affordable home development. However, sometimes people who live in affordable housing are in a position where they feel a need to exploit others. And as you know, Brecken Village is a continuous care community for seniors. While our community members have a wide range of functioning, we are still very vulnerable as a community. I would prefer that an affordable housing community could be built not so close to our homes. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you.
My name is Carol Preston. I live at 422 Lancaster Court in Brecken Village community. I am very happily ensconced in that area, and I also want to express my concerns about the development that is proposed. I don't see enough of a wildlife nature barrier in between the Brecken Village community properties and the proposed development. I am not against development. I am for carefully thought out, thoughtfully planned development, and I urge people with both sides and perspective to consider it from one other humble viewpoint. My husband lives in the Brecken Village community. He is 80 years old. He has dementia. He is very compromised, and the community that developed there and ultimately had me sell my home in Milan and move 4 miles to be in the Brecken Community Condo Association, to be adjacent to where my husband is, as he declines, was a huge life change for me. As would this be should the development, however it develops, whoever it brings to our neighborhood, to safety, consideration of residents and the wildlife that was there before us. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment? There are two from via email. Would you like to start? Thank you.
The first is from Earl and Doris Ream of 564 Lancaster Court. They live a few feet south of the property to make 51 apartments. Their concerns are It is easy to step on their property so close to their home. They hope there would be a high-line fence to stop anyone from walking onto the property. Interested in a fence with strong parts that is too high to climb over. A sidewalk needs to be installed for the apartment for them to walk to downtown Saline. Safety concerns for everyone in Brecken. And they also say us senior people in condos would be easy to attach. That's why a strong high fence sidewalk to ensure residents in the 51 apartments to stay on their property until they are eligible to come to live in Brecken if they choose to also.
Thank you.
And the second one is from Katie Fisher. To whom it may concern, I hope this message finds you well. At risk of sounding pessimistic right off the bat, this email admittedly feels a bit hopeless, since I'm sure the city will move ahead with the approval of yet another cookie-cutter, cramped, and unsightly development within the city limits. However, as a resident of Saline for the past 14 years, I feel compelled to take the time to express my strong objection to the proposed development of 51 residential units by Livonia Builders on the parcel located at 865 North Ann Arbor Street. When I first moved to Saline in 2010, what I loved most about it was the sprawling land that surrounded the city, sunrises visible on my way home from my night shifts at the hospital, ample green space for deer, keeping them away from gardens, landscaping and busy roads, quaint, quiet neighborhoods in a small town with room to breathe, beautifully maintained historical homes and quiet roads. Sadly, I've watched as these green spaces have been steadily gobbled up by builders who seem intent on cramming as many identical homes into every available spot as possible. Our water is often brown and our utility bills keep climbing, but we continue to build more homes that will inevitably add to the strain. Traffic seems to get louder and more steady on North Ann Arbor Street, and a new development certainly will not help with any of this. Change is inevitable, I get that, but when does the local government finally take a step back and realize we've reached our limit? When will we acknowledge that infinite growth in a small city isn't sustainable? At what point do we see there's no open space left, just monotonous, uninspiring neighborhoods full of overpriced homes that strain our already struggling infrastructure? My husband and I enjoy our nightly walks, and we always stop to admire the wildlife and the lovely green space on the parcel in question. It's home to beautiful trees and native plants that should be left alone. Perhaps I'm mistaken, but it doesn't seem like there's such a pressing demand for more housing that it justifies tearing this area apart. I understand that this land may be privately owned and therefore can be sold to the highest bidder, but why must we always put profit above natural spaces? Why can't land just exist without a price tag and blueprint slapped on it? The Saline government's track record on this issue has been disappointing. I hope that the concerns of residents like me will be seriously considered this time around. Until then, I'll make the most of the diminishing patches of genuine nature within our city and hold out hope that our local government will come to appreciate the true value of preserving open spaces. Thank you for your time, Katie Fisher.
Thank you. Public hearing 24-14, application from Danny Veery of Livonia Builders for preliminary planned unit development for a 51-unit multifamily development located on a 6.5-acre site at 865 North Ann Arbor Street, Saline, Michigan, 48176, parcel numbers 18-13-36-301-001. In our packet, we had a report dated August 8th from Planner Auerbach and a memo dated August 4th, 2024 from OHM Engineer Boss. City Manager, are you running the PowerPoint tonight?
Well, I believe. So I will be running the PowerPoint, but I just want to note really quick, there are a number of issues in the comments from Planner Auerbach, just looking for guidance from this commission. So I know it is the recommendation to postpone, but if we could resolve those issues for the petitioner's sake this evening, that would be my goal. Would you like to?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. My name is Ben Carlisle of Carlisle Orman Associates. It's an honor to be here in front of you tonight. I'm kicking Mike under the table for sending my first meeting to be the one where you had the most public attendance to, so I appreciate that. This is a very complex and detailed review. At this point, there are a number of outstanding factors that we have noted in our review, and so we are not recommending approval of the project tonight. However, we are recommending that the Planning Commission discuss the issues at hand, listen to the public comments, and then provide direction to the applicant for a resubmittal to come back before this commission with more details. So I have a pretty detailed PowerPoint, but I'm going to try to really highlight the important items I think the Planning Commission should focus on, and also assist both the Planning Commission and the public understanding what the application tonight before you is. So the site, as noted, is located on North Ann Arbor Road between Saline Waterworks intersection. It's a 6.5 acre area site. It's got currently an existing dwelling on it and an accessory structure, and those would be removed if the project is approved. It's bounded to the west by the Pittsfield 1 drain. It's got a lot of natural vegetation already on the site. This site is actually located in Lodi Township. However, there was a land transfer agreement under what we call 425 Act with Lodi Township that was done in February of this year. The property has not been rezoned, and so that's what we're here tonight to discuss, what the appropriate rezoning and site plan for the project is. So the request of the applicant is to consider a plan unit development. A plan unit development is a form of rezoning that comes with a associated site plan. It does require a public hearing and a recommendation from the Planning Commission that will ultimately be taken up by the City Council. The Planning Commission, as noted, is a recommending body. At this step in the process, you are only considering the preliminary PUD. It does not rezone the property, but simply bestows the right for the applicant to move on to the second step. A PUD is a process. It's more of a negotiation. There's multiple steps. So this is really the first step in a multi-step process. The proposal is 53 dwelling units located in 5 separate buildings, and I can barely see this from where I'm at, but I'm going to try my best to. My red thing's not showing up. So the site is, as noted, it's got 5 separate buildings. Those 2 front cluster of buildings that front on Ann Arbor Road are what we call stack flat. So essentially, you've got 1 unit on the first floor, and you've got a shared unit, a second and a third story as well. So those are 3 stories in height. The proposed 2 buildings behind it are what we call typical townhomes, which are units right next to each other. Those are 2 stories in height. And then you can see on the what is now a dirt access road, there are 6 additional units on that proposed road. That road would be improved if this development does move forward. The total area of the units average between 1,000 to about 1,100 square foot each. They will have 1-car garages as well as 1 driveway space each. And we do note that the applicant is proposing a road that would be constructed just south of the Waterworks Road that would connect to that future improved road, and that would serve as access to those all those units internally, as well as those fronting on Ann Arbor Road, as well as then, like I said, improved to get those 6 units that are now on that unimproved dirt section of the road. I do want to note that these are not affordable housing units. These are market rate units, and so I just want to make sure that's clear to the public. There are a lot of criteria that we use to review a PUD and determine if they're eligible to meet the standards. We generally find they meet the criteria. That being said, though, there are a number of items that we encourage the applicant to look at, specifically with the site plan, as well as a number of items that we think there should be some discussion with the Planning Commission. We find that there should be some additional site improvements, such as open space improvements, landscape improvements, site layout improvements, as well as a statement from a registered engineer with regards to how the project meets the standards. That all being said, we do think conceptually they're moving in the right direction with what's being proposed here. However, there's some significant details and changes to the layout that need to be considered in order to meet the PUD standards in our opinion. It's premature right now, based on all the deficiencies we've noted in the site plan issues, to make a final recommendation or conclusion that it meets the PUD standards. But we think that with some improvements, they're heading, like I said, in the right direction, that we could potentially make a recommendation at the next meeting or so once a resubmittal is given. With regards to surrounding land uses as well as proposed density, to determine the consistency with the master plan as well as consistency with the surrounding land use, we look at the future land use plan in the master plan that was recently adopted by the city. We do note that, again, this site has not been future land use plan because it's not currently in the city. However, it's surrounded by high-density residential to the north, and to the south is also high-density city residential, as well as single-family and multifamily. And to the southeast is office. So a townhome use such as this is really an appropriate, what we find, transitional use between the single-family across the street and the residential projects that are both to the north and south. So the actual product itself is a good fit and an appropriate transition in this particular location. However, again, there are some site plan details that need to be worked out. With regards to the dimensional requirements, the applicant is applying the R3 zoning designation to this project. We do note that the applicant meets all the R3 zoning designation requirements except for two issues. The first is there is a requirement that you can have no more than 9 units connected in the R3. One of the buildings in the back end actually has, 8 units connected. One of the buildings in the back end has 9 units. So they are seeking a modification to add 1 additional unit to what is allowed. Again, through the PUD process, this is a deviation that the Planning Commission, ultimately the City Council, can grant. And the second deviation that they're seeking is there is a building separation requirement from an end of a building to a rear of a building. They are seeking a deviation of approximately 16 feet. 50 feet is required, and they're proposing 34 feet. And this is for just one building on the site. So those are the 2 dimensional deviations that they're seeking through this process. Sorry, skipping ahead here. With regards to building orientation and site arrangement, we do think there should be some discussion with regards to the proposed 3 stories on Ann Arbor Road and 2 stories behind it. The question, I guess, for the Planning Commission to consider and ultimately City Council is 3 stories an appropriate height in relation to the surrounding land uses, and should perhaps the height be flipped and the 2 stories be on Ann Arbor Saline Road and the 3 stories behind? So that's a point of discussion that we think the Planning Commission should have. Furthermore, we do note that that road proposed is a very linear, straight road without any sort of curve or variance to it. One of our concerns is both from an aesthetic standpoint, just the number of what we call kind of a garage door canyon effect that they have. In addition, it's a high-speed area with all those driveways. So we do think there should be some breakup of that road, whether it be a curve or what we call a chicane, which is a small kind of median in between the road that kind of slows traffic down naturally. We think just that long straightaway road could pose some potential traffic issues in the future. As noted, the applicant is proposing one garage space internally and 1 driveway space. We do note that one of the issues in question is one of their garage spaces is only 18.5 feet in length. The standard garage length is 20 feet. I will note a standard F-150, which is the most popular car in the market today, ranges anywhere from 17.5 feet to 20 feet. So there are garages that would not fit a standard F-150, and so that should be a point of discussion that the Planning Commission consider with regards to the garage depth. In addition, we do note that they are requesting 23 guest parking spaces. So for 51 units, it's approximately 1 guest space for every 2 units. We encourage guest parking, but the question is that too much guest parking with relation to conserving additional trees, reducing the amount of impervious surface, et cetera? So again, that should be a discussion with the applicant, whether they think they need those 23 guest parking spaces. Access is noted. All access to the units other than those 6 that front on that unimproved road will be this new private road being proposed. We do note that it is approximately 20.9 feet in width at the narrowest point. The requirement in the city is 24 feet for a private road, so they're asking for a significant 3-foot deviation. This really should be a discussion of the fire marshal and the engineer with regards to if they think that's safe or sufficient. We don't really have a opinion on that regarding from a planning standpoint, but it should be a discussion point with the professionals in that matter. And we do note that they are, as I noted, that all access to those 45 units internal are all going to be from that private road, nothing accessed off Ann Arbor Road. The applicant has provided a limited number of sidewalks in the project. They are going to put a sidewalk on Ann Arbor Road, but however, we note there are limited internal sidewalks. One of our recommendations is to provide a sidewalk that's internal along the drives of internal to the road, as well as a new sidewalk that runs along the 6 units on the unimproved road to connect those to the road on Ann Arbor, or to the sidewalk on Ann Arbor Road. We have reviewed the landscaping. It is concept at this point. We do note that for the most part, we find that there are no, or I should say no, there are very limited site improvements with regards to landscaping. There's no natural areas for any sort of recreational use. There's no active recreation, and there's limited site amenities to the site. So we are encouraging the applicant to include some additional site amenities on the property to improve the use for both visitors as well as residents. The applicant has provided floor plans and elevations. We have reviewed those against the standards. As noted, the units will range between 1,000 to 1,100 square feet, and there are 3 unit types proposed. One of the issues that we did note that we couldn't complete with regards to the review was the applicant only provided elevations to the first floor, or the fronts of all the units. We don't have elevations to the side or rear, so we can't do an evaluation with regards to if these meet the elevation requirements or standards. So we are asking the applicant to provide additional elevations moving forward. Madam Chair, I have a laundry list of recommendations. I've gone through most of them. I have 23 recommendations at this point. So they're on 4 slides. I can go through these individually. I've kind of hit the highlights of what I think should be discussed. But at this point, we are not recommending approval. We think the project has strong merits and has some high quality to it. We do think there's should be some improvements to it, specifically with discussion about the height in the layout, as well as discussion about improvements to the road layout and extra amenities. So with that, I don't know if it's necessary to go through all those recommendations at this point, but I'll defer to you and answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you very much. Engineer Mortiz, do you have anything to add?
I think hello everyone, my name is MC Moritz. I am an engineer with OHM Advisors, and our role is to review submittals that come before this committee. We are checking for compliance with the engineering standards of the city of Saline. So that covers the water, sanitary, stormwater, paving, grading. That's our role here tonight. And I think the planning review hit 3 out of the 4 main points that we wanted the Planning Commission to consider tonight. The first one being the sidewalk along Ann Arbor Saline Road. The proposed sidewalk is not within the right-of-way, so something for you folks to consider. There are a lot of options there, whether the right-of-way is extended or whether there's an easement granted or the sidewalk is moved. But that is something that, doesn't necessarily have to be as it is on the plans right now, and might need to be adjusted. The sidewalk along Saline Waterworks Road is also something that should be considered. Right now, it's not proposed, but it perhaps should be in there along with internal sidewalks. The turning template was not provided for fire and emergency response vehicles or trash removal vehicles. And as the planning report noted, this is a slightly narrower street than usual, so that is something that we've asked for as well to make sure that the access doesn't have any issues and that fire engines aren't hopping curbs or anything like that as they try to make their way in there. A keynote that I wanted to add as well is that on the western edge of this site, there is a creek. It's a county drain. And because the full site is tributary to that county drain, that means that the stormwater management is subject to approval by Washtenaw County. So it is kind of out of our hands as the advisor for the city of Saline. Washtenaw County rules and the city of Saline rules are very, very similar. They're almost identical in terms of stormwater management, with one very important exception. And that is that in the city of Saline, there is not a penalty if you don't infiltrate. So infiltration is when the rain goes into the earth. There's a lot of clay in Saline, so there's not a ton of infiltration happening anyway in a lot of areas. But because this review will go through Washtenaw County, if they are unable to infiltrate, which I'm pretty sure they will not be able to, they're going to be subject to that 20% penalty, which means they'll have to be able to detain and manage 20% more water than they would normally be required to do. So the plans right now don't include that 20% volume penalty. If this were to go forward, it's likely that the county would make them increase the volume of that proposed detention basin. Another note that comes along with county review is that there may be requirements in terms of making this a 433 district. So that's kind of down the road yet and not, necessarily an issue that's being decided tonight or even discussed, but just so that you know when things are tributary to the county drain, it's subject to kind of a different set of requirements in terms of long-term maintenance and who is responsible ultimately for maintaining that drain. There are some smaller final items to be addressed before another submittal to you folks, but they're mostly, administrative things and typo things. It's getting the parcel ID corrected on the plans. It's identifying the existing sanitary service for the domicile that's on the site currently. It's little things that we noticed in the existing topo that should be there that aren't there, but it's not nothing that's dramatic or a deal breaker. So if there are any questions on the utilities or on grading or engineering requirements, just let me know.
Great. Thank you both for very extensive reviews and explanations tonight. Planning Commission members, where would you like to start? Go for it.
Go for it. Okay, for me, trying to understand the topography of that site, it's higher at the northern end versus the southern end. Is the proposal to basically grade all that front and reduce it, or how would that end up being laid out? The home sits significantly on a hill, and then all of that, and as it grades down into the lot.
Yeah, the general topography of the site is a little higher to the north than it is to the south, but it's also all tilted to the west as well. So right now, the general drainage pattern, when we throw the topography into our CAD, it gives us the arrows to show us kind of where things are flowing. Everything's going to the west to that county drain. And the proposed grading shows that would continue to be the case with the vast majority of runoff from impervious surfaces going first to that detention basin.
Are there any concerns with how the water would add to the volume into that tributary going into, eventually goes into the creek down there in that area?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's why we have stormwater management. That's why the city has their rules and standards. And in this case, because it's a county drain, that's why they've got their rules and standards as well. The 20% penalty for not infiltrating that the county will, if this were to go forward, would add to this is specifically to address trying to both slow down how fast the water is flowing into a stream in a high precipitation event. And by slowing it down and holding on to it, giving time for sediment and other pollutants to settle out into that pond. So this site is meeting, without that 20% penalty, this site is meeting those standards in terms of the surface area that's impervious and the volume that's being proposed for the basin.
Okay. So like if they had to modify the detention pond, the slope of the site is not going to be a concern for that as they make it, if they have to make it larger, if you're saying, or is it not larger, it's just a 20%?
Yeah, if they had to go larger, I imagine that the basin would extend to the south. There's certainly more than one way to do this. They might come up with something more creative, but that would be kind of the obvious route to go, I would think. I don't think they'd want to go much deeper because you don't want to get too close to the groundwater either with these basins. And you also have to maintain a wetland buffer as well So they're bumping up against that to the west. So I would think they'd probably just make it longer to the south.
One other question I have is, when we just adopted a new PUD approach. Is this applicable to this now, or is that not yet in effect because we needed to?
That hasn't been adopted at this point, as far as I understand.
It's still in the enactment phase.
So we review this on the existing PUD requirements.
So will that affect a month from now when it becomes?
I defer to your city attorney, but for the, our general rule we follow is we review the application at the time of which it's submitted under which ordinance is in place, and we don't, grandfather's not the right term, but that we are consistent with that ordinance at the time of in terms of the entire review, regardless of whether the ordinance changes midstream during the review.
Okay, I just want to make sure we aren't going to have some kind of a disparity where we're doing one under the other and.
We would apply the ordinance under which it was applied under.
Okay. The other issues I know are going to come forward. For me, the height thing, what is the proposed height of the building? 30 feet, 32, the maximum amount we allow in a residential?
I believe it's 35, which is what the height allowed is. in
So it
the
is up
R3.
to the maximum amount allowed in that.
I'm sorry?
It's the maximum height allowed in an R3?
It's 35, and I believe that's what the height of the 3 stories is.
I think that's enough for me. I'll let everyone else comment.
Additional questions or comments?
I have one question for the applicant when he is given his 10 minutes in just a moment. The question was raised by our planner about potentially swapping the 2-story for the 3-story. The 3-story are currently on the front bordering Saline Waterworks and Saline Ann Arbor Road with the 2-story in the back. I'd be interested to know the applicant's rationale and the ease of switching that if this planning commission and he deemed appropriate or feasible. Other than that, Madam Chair, if there's no additional questions, I'd move to acknowledge receipt of the memo from our city planner and OHM engineers.
Second.
Additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Applicant developer comments, limited to 10 minutes per person if you'd like to come up and speak.
Don't start my clock yet. I want to put my pictures out. This will explain the 2 and the 3-story.
Do you want an easel, Mr. Berry? We have easels available.
I can put them on here.
Okay.
So that's the back side, the 3 stories. That's the street side that would be on Ann Arbor Saline Road. This is a project I built before.
There's some easels in the closet, aren't there, Colleen?
It should be.
Then this would be, the building would be on dirt road, which would now be paved, and that's the rear of it, the rear and the side. So that's the side and the front of the building on Ann Arbor Road. So it's actually 2 stories. It's 2 stories on Ann Arbor Saline Road. It's 3 stories internally. And the main reason why we picked that product is because of the way the topography of the land is. It's higher in the front, and as the engineer had said, it slopes east to west and north to south. So that's why we put that product there. The one correction a couple corrections I want to make, and it was lack of information that the planner, Mike, had to look at. The ranch units are 1,100 square feet, as the plan says. Those units right there, the front half of the building are 1,500 square feet. The back of the building is 1,300. Those units right there are 1,560 square feet. So our ranch units are a little bit smaller. They're a hair smaller than my product across the street. It's a slightly different product. And then the 2-story units are 2 and 3 bedrooms. That one, the front units are 3 bedrooms. These are 3 bedrooms. The back units on those are 2 bedrooms. I do want to mention a couple things that is in the site data on the plans that I think have an impact on this site in a positive way.
Our percentage of lot coverage is 16.7% as a total. We're allowed 40. So we're not even half of what the allowable area coverage is. The zoning allows 14 units, we're at 7.75. This is an extremely difficult site to develop, as I'm sure all of you know. We have the line that goes through it, we have the floodplain at the bottom, we have the creek, we have the topography. It's a very limited area that can be developed on this site. So you're really restricted on a lot of things. Regarding the sidewalks interior, 100% agree, we're doing it, no questions asked. I don't know how that got past me. I'm human, I guess. The sidewalk at the entrance, along Ann Arbor Saline Road, when my engineer called me, we had a situation here that we would have two sidewalks 10 feet apart if we did the one in the right-of-way and the one servicing the units. So to minimize, or I should say use more surface drainage, I said, let's bring the sidewalk that's in front of the units like this and allow that to have access points at both ends so that can be a public walk, even though it's servicing the units. We can push it out to the right-of-way. We can't extend the right-of-way because then our setbacks are going to throw our buildings off. So we could either grant the easement or throw it out to the right-of-way if that's what you guys want. We would just then have to pipe everything instead of allowing the ground to absorb some of that water through swales. So that was the reason why we did that. Again, putting the sidewalk on Saline Waterworks, I don't have a problem doing it. The only thing I want to do is I want to verify with my engineer on the topography to make sure that we're not getting into a ADA compliant walk, because it would be a nightmare to try to do it on that slope. I know it is on my side, on the other side of Saline Waterworks, but I think the topography is much steeper on this side than that other side. I'm glad, Ben, that you mentioned that it is market rate apartments. It is, just like mine are across the street. The road width, it is 25 feet back a curb, and we have 2-foot curb proposed, which makes it 21 feet, not 20.9. We can't, and our curb is not high back like this, it's mountable, so there is a foot of flat pavement there, and then the uprise. So, I mean, you could technically say it's 23 feet wide, but we could also reduce the curb to an 18-inch mountable curb and add another foot of pavement. Again, I'm going to say this for 10 times. This is a very restrictive site on our setbacks, and what we can do as far as, like the chicane that you had, or Mike had recommended, I don't disagree with it. I just don't have anywhere to put it. I can't shift that road. It is only 500 feet long. It is only going to be used by the people that live there. There'd be absolutely no purpose for anybody else to go down that road. The dirt road that we are paving is also going to help the water department access for them. The distance between buildings 4 and 5, that 34.4 dimension that's on there is just showing the distance from the back of the building to the power line easement. It's actually more than that. I do believe, I don't have a scale, but it probably is darn close to that 50 feet that is required. And the last thing I want to hit on is the parking. I'm sure everybody in this room has been to an apartment complex before, and when you can't park, it irritates you and the tenant. I always try to, in every community I always have to get a variance for it, always try to get a 1-to-1 ratio. That's really hard. So in this case, we got a 1-to-2 ratio just because parking is so difficult in a rental community. This is not like your typical garden-style apartment where they have massive parking lots. These are driveways. You can't park in the street because of the way the driveways are situated. We do need that additional parking to help accommodate guests. The garage one that is 18 feet, when we built that unit in Plymouth, We were allowed to put the mechanicals upstairs, and we didn't have that issue, but the code has changed, and now we can't put a furnace up in living area, so we have to put it in the garage. That's only 16 units. All the other ones have at least 21 feet deep garages. So only 16 of them have the somewhat restricted garage depth, which will still fit darn near every single car. It's just a full-size pickup truck that would have the difficulty. Bless you. Outside of that, I think I've hit the main points. There was nothing in here in either of the reviews that I know we can work with them. There's nothing here that's crazy. Just the chicane might be a little tricky because of I got no room. Like, I got no room. What's that? Other than that, sidewalks, not a problem. We can do some improvements to the open space. I was not aware I had to do the narrative, so I do apologize. I will have that for the next meeting. And the elevations for the ranch units, we will have them all in black and white. I 100% assure you I will have them for the final approval, and I'm pushing the architect to get, as I never built that product, that drawing, color drawing done for the next meeting. So that's all I have to say. If there's anything you guys, any questions?
Any questions for the applicant? Yes.
Danny, you know, this issue related to the potential with the drainage and the county's 20%. How do you view that as any hindrance or concern with this project?
We actually have the meeting with the county on Friday to go over this exact item. Normally, before I even come here, we have that meeting to identify where to put the pond. Well, it's pretty obvious where the pond has to go here. There really isn't a lot of choice. So when we do meet with the county and they see the actual development, they'll understand. And we'll have to do our infiltration tests and all that stuff. And she's probably right. I doubt it's going to, I mean, I didn't have sand across the street. I don't think it's any different. And I don't know this for a fact, but I know that when my engineer designs sites that have that penalty, Wayne County has it now, we always account for that before we do anything. So we always look to that as our worst case scenario. I'm assuming he did that on that, but as the engineer said, there's still room that we can go to the south if we need to increase the volume.
And your intent is to really preserve as much of the, I mean, not the trash trees, but preserve as much of the trees or legacy trees that are on the site? What about even on the corner of Waterworks?
Whatever we don't have to remove because of topography or location, I don't take them down. I mean, that's what a lot of people don't understand. It costs us a lot of money to take down trees. We don't want to take down anything that we don't have to. And if the topography or the grading is going to create it to die in a few years, we don't want to put that burden on the person living. In this case, it'd be us. But, you know, if it was a homeowner, we wouldn't want to leave that condition for them in the future. So trust me, we don't take anything down we don't have to.
And you're intending to hold on to this property?
I'm actually building this property for a client of mine that they own that one right now in Plymouth.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's it for me, thanks.
Can I ask a question about parking?
Yeah.
So in our report from the planner, there's a bit of a discrepancy whether that's 28 spaces or 23 spaces. And then if I look on the maps, it actually looks like there's maybe 27 if you count one of them that looks like it's supposed to be handicap accessible. So if we're really talking, what are we really talking about, 28 or 23?
Well, based on the drawing I'm looking at, it identifies 28, which one will be ADA,
Okay.
which would give us 27 normal, non-ADA spaces. We'd have 27.
Okay, so 28 or 27 instead of
Correct.
23 spaces that we're looking at.
Correct.
Additional questions?
Yeah, you said this development has more parking than your one in Plymouth, or?
No, the one in Plymouth that one has much more than this. That's a 68-unit development, and I think we have 45 additional spaces. It's tough. If you don't have two-car garages and a two-car driveway, it's tough when you have people over, any guess.
And many people have two cars, so that.
Right. Right. Well, the good thing is a lot of people work from home now, so they don't leave. If they're okay with it,
I'm sorry.
In
you can ask me after.
I did have a question about the private road, and I understand that
Are you talking about the internal road or the side road?
internal road,
Okay.
just in general. I know with the roll curb, 21 feet, 22 feet or whatnot, but I know on the 207 road, that was a private road for those people. I'm just questioning why the road is not built to city standards of 24 feet.
My only guess, because I didn't design it, is space. Now, I can see the building to the north. We do have some room that we can widen it, because everything would have to shift west. It becomes more of an issue where Building 4 is, because we have to maintain a distance from the power lines. And that's where we get into a potential issue on widening it. We can make it as wide as it can go. I don't have an issue with that, so we might be able to make it, for sure, if we take the 18-inch curb instead of the 24, it automatically picks up a foot, so it would be 22 of pavement, which is, I believe they factor 12 feet, or I'm sorry, 10 feet for each way. I could be wrong, though. I'm going to ask you, do you know what in a normal, do they figure for a lane, is it 10 feet, 11 feet?
I mean, approximately, honestly, I'm going to toss it to the planner.
Sorry, what's the question, Danny?
Was that boring you, Ben?
I'm sorry, I was looking up something else.
Just teasing you. Normal road width, do they figure, is it 12 feet for a
A normal lane, yeah.
passenger car?
It's, a normal lane, travel lane is 12 feet, so that's why a normal road is 20 feet from back of curb to back of curb.
If they're using a 2-foot curb?
If they're using a 2-foot curb,
Okay.
correct.
So again, I will do everything we can to squeeze that, as much room in there as we can.
I will say, if the chicane or curve in the road is not possible, a narrow road width actually reduces speed traffic. So that's something you should consider when you do have that discussion about the width of the road versus speed and whether or not there can be some variables in that. That was it.
Thank you. Yes.
Another one, just looking actually at that road and the intersection where Cascade Point is there any way to make that more of an intersection, or is that not an intent to do that, or is the land just not set up to do that?
This land it's a real challenge. It is a real challenge. It would have been nice if the other side lined up like that.
Yeah, I know the other side's more in the hill and the hole.
Additional questions or comments for the developer? Thank you very much.
All good? Thank you.
Madam Chair, if there's no additional questions for the developer or staff at this time, I would move to open the public hearing at 7:52, affording the public another opportunity to speak to this issue.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. All public comments will be heard, a limit of 3 minutes per person.
Ma'am, if you'd like to ask your question right now, you may.
You have to come to the podium, though, and speak on the record.
My name is Betty Drenning, and I'm just wondering why you have to use the existing dirt pathway as a road to get back to the development. Is that necessary? Could there be another way? Because it comes very close to the condominiums on the back of that lot, and it's just, I always thought it was just a straight road to go back to some sort of utility, whatever, in the back there. Does that road have to be used and paved? That is my question.
Thank you very much. Yes.
No, I can get this far. Carol Preston again, 422 Lancaster, that's the main street. We have a main street and then an east and a west court. And I just, the question screaming in my head where I live and daily watch is ambulance traffic, which in Brecken Village is frequent, fire truck, rescue, and then, of course, waste management vehicles, and smaller lanes, turnarounds, in and out. Again, my viewpoint, because of my compromised husband and his failing health, is ambulance and rescue.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. Do I understand correct? This is Wayne Yankee again. Is this place being rented? It's not people buying these units? Is that the plan, that they're going to be all rentals?
I believe that's the proposal, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, if there's no additional public comments at this time, I would move to close the public hearing at 7:55.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Comments or questions from Planning Commission members? There's been multiple things that Mr. Carlisle had mentioned, we had already discussed, but is there anything that's glaringly that you'd like to talk about before I kind of go down the list?
Can I respond, Madam Chair, to some of the questions
Yes,
that were made during the public hearing? So to Mrs. Preston's concern about making sure that emergency vehicles can access the property, that is thoroughly done during every site plan approval in the city of Saline. So before we get to final site plan, it has to be reviewed specifically by public safety, police, and fire to ensure that emergency vehicles can access the site if there was a fire or some sort of catastrophic emergency that required prompt assistance or prompt response, from our public safety officials. Perhaps the city manager can elaborate, but the existing dirt road was installed many decades ago to access a city parcel, which has been used since the early 2000s as our water treatment facility.
That's correct. The existing dirt road is a secondary means of emergency egress and ingress to the water treatment plant.
Very good. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Okay. We had talked about the private road. We had talked about sidewalks. Mr. Beery had already discussed that. 3 stories on Ann Arbor versus switching them. We see the visuals. Does anybody have questions or comments about 3 stories on Ann Arbor versus?
I think isn't the issue 3 stories from the reverse and not on Ann Arbor Street? Because this looks like it has a facade of being a two-story, as Mr. Verdi had mentioned, that it's 3 stories from the back, but 2 stories in the front.
Yeah, that's Ann Arbor Road. This would be internally. So the 3rd story is in the back, not in the front.
Okay, thank you.
And one thing I did forget, if I may, the interior road, I'm sorry.
Oh, the mic.
The interior road, those are in Ann Arbor, Saline Road. The units on the other side are just 1 story tall, not 2.
Okay,
So it's 1 story on one side, and then it'll be the 3 like that on the other side.
thank you for the clarification. Yes, any additional comments? All right, is there a motion on the table to, I don't know if everything that we have discussed has been,
I'll move to postpone
Okay.
the preliminary plan unit development for 51-unit multifamily development at 865 North Ann Arbor Street, Saline, Michigan, 48176, parcel number 18-13-36-301-001 to, I guess you had recommended, city manager,
September
September
11.
11th, and if we need to, we can postpone it.
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
additional discussion?
Just for the public's benefit, so that means we'll reconsider preliminary site plan approval essentially in 1 month's time, the second Wednesday of September 11th, here in council chambers at 7. You're welcome to attend, and if you and your neighbors have additional questions and concerns and can't be here, you're welcome to submit your comments through the recording secretary.
And information about that, additional information will be on the site, will be on our city site under the agenda.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? This has been postponed to September 11th. I see no discussion on our agenda. Is there a motion on the table to excuse the absence of Ms. Cole?
Moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn at 7:59?
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Have a great night.